Hi and welcome to Literary Hype. I am Stephanie, your Literary Hype Woman, back with another author conversation from C2E2. That's the Chicago Comics and Entertainment Expo. One of the panelists at the 2023 convention was Mark Oshiro, and I got to talk to them after their panel and their signing about all of the books that they have coming out. It's wild how many books they have coming out, and that includes one with Rick Riordan. So without any further ado, here's my conversation with Mark Oshiro. Welcome.
Hello! I'm so excited!
Are you having a good con so far?
Yes. The first time at C2E2 ever. Never been here. I've been to things. It's weird saying it's similar because this is not like other comic-themed conventions. It's a lot. And I keep looking over here because there's a new cosplay every 5 seconds. It's amazing.
There is.
It's amazing.
And there's birds running around.
There's a bird.
We're
a literal bird, by the way.
A literal bird.
We're not lying. It's literal.
Literal
yes.
bird. So you're here talking about your brand baby new book.
Baby, just like the bird.
Yes, baby.
We're not cutting that, by the way. That's great. It's great.
Okay,
it's
fine.
Perfect.
He's just making directorial decisions for me. So tell me about your brand new book, Into the Light.
Yes, thank you. I'm really excited. I've been working on this book for better part of 6 years. So long time coming. Into the Light is not only my newest YA, it's my first thriller with a slight speculative twist. It is about two boys whose lives are intertwined because of this religious organization that has a camp in the forest of Idlewild, California, which is very close to where I grew up. It's about their destiny, how their lives are intertwined with one another, which I'm not going to spoil.
Okay, good, because I'm only 50 pages in.
Okay, good. No, we won't be talking about anything mostly beyond 50 pages. Maybe a few little things, but I'm really proud of it. It's I do write from a personal space, but this one is the most autobiographical thing I've ever written, and I'm proud of it, both in its structure and how complex it is, but just how emotional it is, and I feel very close, very, very close to it.
What aspects of it, without too many spoilers, are autobiographical for you?
Wow, okay. I mean, so this is a thing I've been having to sort of reckon with as the tour for this just started this week. I haven't been on the road in almost 5 years, and every night, I'm getting questions and I'm remembering oh, you did write a book that is very largely autobiographical. So on the more unfortunate side, I went through an experience very similar to Manny, one of the main characters, in which I was rejected not only from a religious community, but from my family. And so I was homeless as a teenager. And so the main character is dealing with that somewhat differently than I did. So there is some distance between Manny, this character, and Mark, the person. But a lot of those experiences that he went through are drawn from that same well of experience that I, went through as a teenager. So those elements, there's a lot of stuff in Reconciliation, which is the name of this camp in the forest, that is built on very, very real things that I went through when I was younger. On the more positive side, there's this traveling family named the Varelas, who Manny eventually sort of connects with, who are sort of a composite of multiple people I've met over the years. I open Into the Light with a dedication to all of the people who I knew and who are also strangers who helped me through this really difficult period when I was 16, 17 years old. And they sort of all make up who some of these characters who are the light in this book. It is called Into the Light for a reason. There is a light of hope and a light of kindness in this book. And those are all very real things too.
What is it like for you to be writing something that's so close to you, like the emotional stress of putting that down on the page?
There wasn't, there was some stress for certain scenes. A lot of it actually felt just very cathartic. Just really this, a lot of writers talk about how writing is healing, and I do feel like this book was healing in a lot of ways. It's been, this week has been full of some of my favorite conversations I've ever had with other authors, with other readers about the subject matter of the book. And each one of them, I'm like, okay, this is what you were supposed to do. This is what you were supposed to write about. It has been, as heavy as the book is at times, it has been a delight. It has been so much fun.
And you mentioned this is your first thriller. What made you want to write a thriller as opposed to you've done other more realistic YA?
Okay, so my true love is thrillers, horror films. That's the thing. And I have been writing towards that. There are elements of horror in Each of Us a Desert, my previous YA book. But this was the one where I really just wanted to lean into being very creepy. There's a very unnerving atmosphere throughout this book. You know, I also waited instead of writing a thriller or horror earlier because I wanted my craft to be at a little higher level, and I wanted to have a lot more books under my belt before I attempted this, because I find horror is actually very difficult to write because you're writing in the space of where horror is so subjective, and what is frightening or scary to one person is child's play to someone else. And so writing in that space, I just wanted my own personal level. You know, I wanted to be leveled up a little bit as a writer before I attempted it, and also it allowed, as weird it is to say this, it made writing it fun. As hard as this book was at times, putting it through that sort of lens of a thriller or a horror novel made it a thrill for me to write. Just knowing where it was going to go, the scenes that I knew were going to be the most, or at least what I felt were going to be the most effective. Like it's evil. Like, but I was sitting there writing some things. I'm like, ooh, this is going to make people cry. Someone's going to want to like throw hands when they read this. Like, it's great. And that's the thing. I want that emotional reaction. And so it did. It made writing it a lot of fun.
It's early on since it's come out. Have you started to get any feedback so far?
Yes. And I got my first tagged in my first negative review, which was so fast.
Don't tag authors in reviews.
Unless it's this one, because it was 2 stars. It was a 2-star review, and it said this book started out weird and just kept getting weirder. And I was like, yeah, like that's what I wanted to do. Right. And I also very much am in this place where I think this book, more than anything I've ever written, is actually not for everyone. So to me, that wasn't insulting. I was like, yeah, it's a very weird book, and it takes you on this strange journey. So there's that element. I think this is the most sort of awarded book I've had in terms of starred reviews. That part has been surprising because I did not expect to get such positive support from like a lot of the trade magazines and trade journals. You know, and then meeting readers night after night on this tour for this book, it feels really good to hear this feedback of like, not only did the big twist get me, but that I loved hearing. So someone told me the other day, like, this felt like what I had wanted to do, which was level up as a writer. They're like, I've never experienced your writing like this before. It's very clear you got better. And man, like, I hope so. I hope as I continue to write books that I'm always challenging myself and always trying to level up in some way. So that has been a very humbling and flattering experience on here, is to get that feedback of like, you wrote a book, Mark. Like, and I love that. Like, it's such a pure reaction.
So what kind of like advice along the way have you gotten from other authors? Because like Comic-Cons, you're around other authors, getting to meet other authors
Absolutely.
that you haven't met. The community in writing is so great. What's that been like for you?
I'm very lucky in that very early on in my career, even before I had a book published, I had a number of people in the young adult industry who sort of took me under their wing. In particular, I'm thinking of Danielle Clayton, Zoraida Cordova, Adam Silvera, Patrice Caldwell, Alex London. These are people who I'm dear friends with and have been with me on this journey. I wrote a lot of Into the Light on these Zoom calls that I did with Danielle Clayton, Adam Silvera, and then later Patrice Caldwell joined us when we were all drafting at the same time in 2021 and going through it, because the world is what the world was. I started drafting this before vaccines were a thing, so we were all still stuck in our homes, and God, it was so helpful. I don't actually feel writing is very lonely for me. I feel very lucky that I have such wonderful friends in this industry, and now that I live in Atlanta, I have a very robust group of friends in Atlanta who were all trying to write with each other and get together, and we write in community. So I didn't write this book alone in that sense, and so some of the advice was very actual logistical advice of me getting stuck writing certain scenes. I did an event with Adam the other night, and he brought that up about how one of the things that those Zoom calls really helped was when you do get writer's block, or you feel like you've written yourself into a hole, you're not sure where it goes, and being able to talk with people and be like, well, why do you feel that way? Where do you feel stuck? And just having a little bit of an outside influence and an outside look, like those, just having another set of eyes sometimes can unlock something in your head. My very best brainstorming friend, Sarah Gailey, who writes adult and young adult fiction, who I adore, they have been so helpful also in just developing these stories. I always run all my outlines through Sarah, and we just pitch each other ideas, and I love that. I love that I don't get to do this alone. So, a lot of the advice is write what you know, write the truth. Don't shy away from things that are difficult just because they're true, and also this book for me was, I just wanted to write something unhinged, very feral, I'm going to do what I want and tell the story I want. And I really think I did. And I think I also would not have had quite that confidence if I didn't have these wonderful friends helping me along the way.
And you've got another book coming that you did not write alone.
No, I didn't. Oh my God. The Sun and the Star, a Nico D'Angelo venture comes out, which is the book that I co-wrote with Rick Riordan. What a sentence that is.
Right? Like, how did that come about?
So that story is wild. There were a few projects that I had worked on with Disney that didn't end up going through, but it got me on the radar of Rick's editor, Stephanie Lurie, who's just one of my favorite people. And when Rick has been talking about a potential Nico book for years. Like, it has been a thing. And so when Rick felt like he was in a space where I think this is time to make it a thing, he was very much like, I don't think I should do this alone, particularly because he didn't want to write these queer main characters as a straight white man, and was like, I want to bring someone in on this process. So his editor reached out to my agent. We had a Zoom call. I actually auditioned.
What is an audition like for writing?
So it was amazing because I had to sign an NDA, the most terrifying legal and document I think I've ever signed. And when I signed it, I was then given the outline for this potential book. So I have known since February 2021 the things.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I'm going to say, Percy. Like, the things. And then it was, we want you to write basically like the first 3 chapters, about 10,000 words. What do you think this book would look like? And it wasn't a demonstration of like my writing skill, because Rick had already read, I believe, Anger's a Gift, had attended an event that me and Julian Winters did. Like, he's like, I feel like you're the right person, but we still want to go through this process, and it also needs to be approved by so many other people in Disney. So in a fever pitch, I think I wrote it in like 48 hours. After having reread the whole series in preparation for it the 3rd time. So I like binged the books and finished them in like 10 days, like 15 books. It was wild. Like, wrote this thing, and I think it took about a month to go through the process before I got the email, like, you're in, it's happening. And then we revised the outline extensively. My favorite part, this is a cool thing. I don't know if I've talked about this publicly. I think Becky Reardon has. Becky Reardon was involved in the editorial process. This is Rick's wife, during the outline stage, and they were some of my favorite notes of like, oh, Mark, what if we do this way? Or she was very instrumental in how I eventually wrote Will, who was of the 2 characters was the one that was harder for me to write. Nico was like, that's my child. Like, I know how to write Nico. Like, so it was amazing, and basically Rick and I just went back and forth. I wrote the first draft. He edited and rewrote a whole bunch of stuff, and then it went back to me, and we just went back and forth over and over and over, and it made a book. It made a whole book. It's wild. I still can't believe it's real.
So you've got 2 books essentially coming out in 6 weeks.
Well, I just had a Star Wars book come out at the beginning of March, so 3 books in like 2.5 months. I'm fine. I'm fine, everyone.
Are you fine, though? Like, how do you take care of yourself when you're doing all of this?
Okay.
Deadlines.
So this is not a joke. Sleep. I am very proud. Every night on this tour, I've gotten at least 7 hours, but usually between 8 and 9. And so it is a thing where I'm sacrificing, being social sometimes. I am also a little more COVID cautious than other people because I am a very high risk for COVID. And so I've been like getting back to my hotel, like after an event, being like, I'm not hanging out with anyone. I'll do a little I'm working on another book right now. But sleep has been the best because it just means I can have the energy that I have and be here, and I am respecting my body. And it is a thing I learned the hard way because I did not do that ever before this. So that has been a huge help. And then also just getting to see friends. I've gotten to see friends here at C2E2 I haven't seen in years. And just it's just been, I don't know, this past week has been very rejuvenating for me. I missed getting to do in-person events. It's been years. So, it is, I'm learning to take care of myself. And sometimes that's socializing, sometimes it's sleeping, making sure, I'm going to say this, making sure I eat. And in my head, I'm like, Mark, you haven't eaten lunch today. So I will be doing that. I will be doing that at some point, but yeah.
I mean, I had M&Ms for lunch, so I'm not much better than you.
What kind of M&Ms?
Peanut M&Ms. Protein.
Correct. Also, the best ones. They're
Exactly.
the best ones.
I have a whole big giant bag of them, like, just floating around. That is con food.
Oh my God.
Did we just become best friends?
And I can see. You know, have you seen Everything Everywhere All at Once?
Yes.
So you know the bagel reveal?
Yes.
In my head, it's just one peanut M&M, just shining.
Just,
I don't know that I haven't eaten an M&M in a really long time, but every time I eat them, it's only the peanut ones.
They're the best
They're
ones,
the
and
best
it's protein,
ones.
so it counts as a meal.
Ew, they had these new ones that came out last year. This is a lie. I did have an M&M last year. They were like crunchy pretzel or something. Maybe not the They were so nasty, and I was like, I will never betray my peanut M&M ever again.
Stick with what's good.
Stick with what's good.
They're the classic for a reason.
Yeah, agreed.
Love it, here for it. How do you balance, going back to books,
Yeah.
how do you balance when you're drafting and putting out so many books all at once and like doing the tour and all of that? Like, how do you schedule-wise balance that? Because that seems crazy.
It does, but schedule-wise, what has happened for the past 3 years is that I was just drafting, and that was it. Like, I had a virtual launch for Each of Us a Desert, same for The Insiders. And I had my first in-person launch in years for David Bravo last year, so there wasn't anything. So that is part of why my output was so high, is I was just at home. So I didn't have the travel component, so I'd finish a book and be like, well, I'll just go to the next one. So in 2021, I wrote 4 books. I wrote the Star Wars book, David Bravo, Into the Light, Percy Jackson in one calendar year. I wasn't really traveling. So right now what it is, you know, it's part of self-care. And for me, writing is so rejuvenating, and I do have fun still doing it. So on the plane, I'll draft for like an hour, and then I'll like maybe play a game and just give my brain a break. I know this evening I have a very early flight to Louisville tomorrow. So this evening, like after dinner, I'm just gonna sit in my hotel and just work a little bit on it. My book is not due till June, so I started in March to give myself time so that I wasn't rushing to the finish line. So that I really think the answer is very similar to the self-care one, which is respect your time. I am dedicating at least a little bit. There are multiple birds at this point. Sorry. I love it. Yeah, just dedicate. Yeah, I love Chicago. So just making sure to dedicate time to, you know, this mental part, both taking care of myself mentally, but also it is. I love writing. I still do, and then this is going to be my 8th book, and it's still just as fun as. I think it's actually more fun than the first book, because that first book was a struggle.
Why is that?
Because I know what I'm doing now, and maybe like that doesn't mean I don't get stuck writing things, but I have a process now. I've published, you know, The Sun and the Star will be my 7th book, so I'm not having those moments of, do you know how to write a book? I can just look over at my bookshelf and be like, girl, you wrote 7. Like, you can do this. And so that does make it easier, is knowing I have accomplished it. My books people enjoy and they've won awards. You're okay, Mark. Like, the anxiety is normal, it makes sense, but you can do it. So yeah, I actually do think it's a lot more fun now.
Well, Matt just set up this other question that I had written down perfectly. What do you know now about writing after putting out all these books that you wish you would have known when you started?
The biggest one is I cannot write by the seat of my pants. I absolutely need to outline. I plan all my stories out beforehand. And psychologically, for me, the most important thing is knowing what the ending is, because for me, that's what I'm writing towards. And when I do get stuck, that tends to be the thing that sort of unlocks my brain. And I think, well, how do I get there, or how do I make it harder to get there? Interesting factoid, I write. When I sit down and I've written my outline and I know what the story's be, the first thing I write is the last line. And interesting enough too, the last line has never changed in any of my projects. It has always been the thing that ends it so far. We'll see, but so far, because for me the last line is a rumination on the theme. It's the thing I'm trying to earn as a writer. And I love thinking of endings that way. You have to earn it through the writing and through the story. So I did not know that when I wrote Anger is a Gift. And Anger is a Gift took me 3.5 years to write, 5.5 years to publish. And once you're in publishing, you don't generally have the luxury of that much time anymore. So the thing I figured out by Each of Us a Desert, plan. It is okay if that's part of your process. I've made peace with that. I'm not a pantser. And I admire people who can do that. It seems so magical, and they talk about it, and I'm like, that sounds wonderful. My brain can't do that. So that is the biggest thing that I have learned since then.
And since you mentioned Anger is a Gift, because that's the first book of yours that I read, as a homeschool kid from the middle of nowhere,
Yeah.
this was like a very different experience.
Yeah.
How important is it for people to read books from perspectives that don't line up with what they see the world as?
It's so interesting too when I meet people who have issue with that, because I'm like, but that was my whole childhood, was never reading anything from my perspective or that aligned with my experience until I got to high school, when I was reading things like Bless Me Ultima, The House of Mango Street, where I started to see an overlap between that. And for me, it's like, I do love when a story is very relatable to me and there's elements of myself that I can see it. I also so greatly enjoy reading something that I'm like, I don't know what any of this is, because it's fun. It's part of the journey. I think of, there's a weird fiction writer who writes fantasy, science fiction, horror, all of those sort of things, called China Mieville. He's huge. Like, I don't know why I said that like he's a tiny little writer, but anyway, one of the things I love so much about his writing is finding the humanity or the inhumanity in the absolute strangest things, and it's so fun. And so for me, it's like, I know there are people, Into the Light is a great example, Anger's a Gift is a great example. I think both of those books are almost sort of like thematically linked in that there's going to be a huge chunk of readers who read them and they're like, I don't know this experience. I've never gone through anything like that. But I hope the storytelling on top of it, on top of what that experience is, provides entertainment. I don't always intend for a book to teach, but if it does show you a different part of the world, that's great. So I don't know, it's my experience, the vast majority of the things that I have read and watched and listened to have nothing to do with me. And I just think that's what consuming art is you learn about the world through things that have nothing to do with you.
So can you say anything about what you're working on?
Yeah, I can. I'm not too shy about it. I'm working on my book number 8, which is going to be my next middle grade novel. I'm writing about ghosts and grief, and it has a working title. I do give everything a working title. Sometimes that title does not survive, so just don't expect that this is what it'll be when it comes out. But right now it's called Jasmine is Haunted. It's about a girl dealing with grief over losing her father and the weird ways it manifests in her life. And I promise you it's mostly a comedy. And it's about little queer Ghostbusters. And I'm having so much fun drafting it. And then while that's happening, so that's actually the drafting stage. I've already done all the outlining and planning and whatnot. I am working on the outline for my next young adult. I would like, right now, and I'm thankful my publisher is not asking me to do a book a year for YA.
So since this is literary hype, what books are you hyped about?
A lot of what I've been reading lately has been middle grade, actually. And so the ones that I immediately go to, I'll give you four middle grade books. All right, here we go. The Vanquishers by Kaylin Barron, about a group of kids who worship the Vanquishers who killed all... Sorry, the bird is back. And very close. Hi, bird. I have nothing for you. I have book recommendations. Okay, so who worship this group called the Vanquishers, who long ago killed all the vampires, except now the kids believe the vampires are back, but no one believes them. A Benny Song by P. Jelly Clark, which comes out this year. African fantasy, every 10 pages I was like, I didn't know you could do this in middle grade. The Marvelers by Danielle Clayton, which for me feels like such a reclamation of the magic book in the middle grade space. And Valentina Salazar is Not a Monster Hunter by Zoraida Cordova, which is like a love letter to supernatural and just has some of my favorite middle grade characters, particularly adults, that I have ever read. And so, yeah, a lot of what I've been reading lately has been in the middle grade space. So it's that, and then everything I'm watching is all like horror, clearly for adults, not at all intended for children, because that's apparently my comfort. So, but yeah, those are my things that I'm very hype about in the literary space.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. You are fabulous. Best of luck on all of your book launches going on right now.
And thank you. And I'm going to hype you up a little bit, which is that before I was a writer, or not before I was a writer, before I was a novelist, before I was a book blogger or whatever, I was actually a music journalist. And I love your interview style. And it is really cool to be interviewed by someone who pays attention, who's got details. You were wonderful. And I think it is also very flattering to me to get your support. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks to Mark for hanging out with me and just being so kind and chill and encouraging. It was an absolute honor and pleasure to get to talk to them about their books and just have a really good time at this convention. So if you're interested in any of their books, check the links down below. There are quite a few, including the 3 brand new releases of 2023. And you can also find them on social media with the link down below. And while you're that side of the screen, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on your notifications if you haven't already so you know when there's a new video, these author conversations, Comic-Con panels. There's so much fun happening on the Literary Hype channel, and I am so thrilled to get to share that with you. So thank you so much for tuning in for this author conversation. I will see you next time. Have a great day.